I don't recall the weather that day, not the air outside or the color of clouds behind the studio windowpanes. All I remember is the hard glare of the lamps overhead and the pounding of my pulse, echoing in my ears, sharper with every hostile word that bounced off the brick walls. It was my third year in the engineering program at Universidade Federal do Paraná, Curitiba. That afternoon, we were supposed to share rough versions of our final projects, half-finished, experimental and real, built from months of sketches and exhausted evenings. When my name was called, I wheeled my prototype into the center of the room, a lopsided structure of composite plastic, wired sensors and servo motors, barely the size of a side table. My hands shook as I pulled off the tarp. The small robot trembled for a second, as if out of pity, then its right leg spasmed, screeched and gave way. I lunged to catch it. A wave of laughter snapped out from Bruno, from Sergio, from the older guys by the windows who watched everything like it was already beneath them. Dr. Neves, our professor, arched an eyebrow from behind his glasses. Lucas, recapitule progent, porque Curitiba precisa de mais brinquedinho. My throat closed up. It's not a toy, professor. It's for flood monitoring. It can reach places people can't, check water levels, collect samples using onboard. Bruno interrupted, voice heavy with sarcasm, but why walk? Why not use a drone like everyone else? Drones don't work in tunnels or uneven ground, if you look at the chassis. No one bothered to look, Sergio grinned. Cara voce realmente now saved de sister, nay. His tone, effortless and cruel, made it clear he'd never faced real consequences himself. Dr. Neves studied my work for a long moment, as if searching for worth. Sometimes, Lucas, engineering is about learning from failure. You want to build robots for Curitiba. Robotics is for corporations, not garages. Especially here. There was muffled laughter, this time even from some visiting faculty. My ears rang, my face burned, and their commentary rolled right through me. I tried to defend the bot, stammering desperately about mobility and floodplain safety before Dr. Neves moved on. I wheeled my broken project away. The rest of the presentations vanished in a blur. When it was over, I shoved the bot into my bag and left through the side door, ignoring Bruno's sneered, "Boa sorte como se franchise de brinquedos, Robo-Man." On the crowded bus back to my parents' apartment in Santa Felicidade, I pressed my head against the cold window. Rain streaked the glass, glossing the old city streets, jacarandas just beginning to blossom. The broken robot sat in my lap, heavy and awkward. I caught myself wishing, not for the first time, that I could just settle for the ordinary, steady job, small ambitions, the path everyone said made sense. But the frustration burned hotter with each attempt to ignore it. I kept thinking of neighborhoods that always flooded after a storm, kids wading through filthy water, shopkeepers in rubber boots, worn faces sweeping mud off tile floors. I needed to prove robots could do something useful, that engineering could matter. I slipped in late that night. My mother waited with a plate of reheated feijoada. She looked up, "Como foi? Tudo bem?" She nodded, but her question stayed in the air long after I'd gone to my room. A few weeks later, I overheard my Uncle Flavio joke at dinner, "O Lucas podia ser engenheiro de verdade, mas gosta desses robozinhos inúteis. Achaque vai ficar rico igual americano." My father neither argued nor agreed, just passed the beans. I stopped going to family gatherings. I spent more nights in the school robotics lab, where the burn of solder and hot plastic felt more like home than my own kitchen. When things didn't break, I sometimes slept there, headphones on, wrapped up beside my bot. I filed a dozen grant requests, failed in competitions, burned what little money I had on spare parts and motors from junk shops. I missed my cousin's wedding, ignored more Sunday lunches, faded gradually out of family conversations. Only a handful of classmates, outsiders with their own wild goals, seemed to understand. Graduation blurred past. I was not top of my class, had no job offers, no big internships. I tried for a while to fit in, running the bakery's cash register, going to interviews for IT positions I dreaded. I couldn't do it. The memory of that public failure, "You want to build robots for Curitiba. Especially not here," loomed inside me. I made myself a promise, 1 year to make something that really worked or walk away. I found a crumbling studio to rent in Rebouças, moved in with a roommate who built racing drones. I lived on instant noodles and leftover pão de queijo, sleeping in a nest of clothes, collecting dead batteries and broken sensors scavenged from shop floors. During the day, I took contract work debugging aging assembly lines. At night, I rebuilt, redesigned, sturdier frame, waterproof joints, a vision module rigged from an old phone's camera. One night, as a June storm flooded the viaducts, I took the bot to the street and set it down in ankle-deep water. For a moment it wobbled, then it moved, hunched, awkward but walking. It fed images and temperature readings to my phone further than it ever had before, half a block, then the motor fizzled, but for those moments it worked. I huddled on the curb, jeans wet, letting a quiet tear sting my cheek, not from shame for once but joy, a raw hope, just enough to keep me going. I wrote emails to city engineers, university labs, startups. Most ignored me, a few replied with polite dismissals. I uploaded shaky demo videos, tagged local journalists and tech folks. Sometimes other enthusiasts responded with advice, sometimes with snide jokes. Nice toy, bro. Still, flood season worsened, and eventually a team from Public Works invited me to a test. We met in heavy rain behind a flooded parking lot in Aguas Verde. 3 city workers, skeptical, watched as my robot trudged through the runoff. After 20 meters, it found the blockage and sent video to their phones, plastic bags, bottles, abandoned junk. Estevão, the supervisor, grunted, "Se isso eigentram meias Lucas, talvez a gente test mais." Not a contract, but not nothing. I snapped a photo of that muddy, dripping moment. I sent it to my mom. "Do certo," she didn't reply. Still, I let myself feel a little pride. Work crept along, uneven. A second test, a small grant from a civic tech fund. At the year's end, I had 2 working bots and a name, Vigilantia Robotics. Every bit of progress was shadowed by old doubts, each skeptical comment, each failed prototype, each time my parents introduced me, Lucas nosso engenheiro, faz uns projetos de robo sabe. Ele tenta. It was relentless, not dramatic, just daily effort, exhaustion, little wins, repeated setbacks. On quiet nights, I'd remember the critique at school. I'd see Bruno's smirk, feel Dr. Neves's condescension. I'd panic, maybe they were right, maybe I was nothing but a joke. Then I'd recall the field tests, the moment Estevão smiled after a crew cleared a flood before homes were ruined. The intern who emailed, "Minha vou conseguiu manter a loja seca este ano. Obrigado," just enough to steady me. My breakthrough arrived in the 3rd year. The city awarded us a contract for 10 bots. I recruited 2 old classmates, Marina, a coder, and Felipe, electronics. We set up our own space, still cold but bright in hours. When the mayor's office visited for the press launch, my mother stood by as I demonstrated the bots. I caught her watching me, not with confusion but with pride and relief. I didn't say how little it all felt, she already knew. Years blurred by. Sometimes the bots failed, sometimes they worked so well the city called them a milestone. Where students used to call my robots cute, professors now invited me to guest lectures about environmental robotics. I learned to delegate, to pitch, to survive lean months and push through setbacks. I kept the memory of my early humiliation close, half warning, half fuel. Then came the invitation. Dr. Neves again, his tone as guarded as ever. "Lucas, teremos uma apresentação sobre inovação local. Gostaríamos que você mostre seu trabalho." The same room, the same awkwardness. For 10 minutes I hovered over his email, unsure if I felt angrier or prouder. I almost declined, but some old stubbornness flared up. I couldn't refuse. On the day, I drove through town past stretches of purple jacaranda, old neighborhood shops. My team brought 2 production bots, a new research prototype, and a small printer for parts. I put on the same jacket I'd worn to my first critique, palms sweating. Inside, the studio had hardly changed. Bare brick rows of seats, students checking their phones. I recognized only a few faces, now older, lined. Dr. Neves watched from near the door. I brought out the bot, polished chassis, bright city stripes. Everything tighter, cleaner, more robust. Neves introduced me. Lucas Vargas, fundador de Rebouças, empresa pioneira em Curitiba. I began, voice trembling at the edge. Até hoje lembro quando mostrei meu primeiro prototipo aqui. Ele falou, fui chamado de sonhador, disseram que robótica não era para nossa cidade. Mas às vezes, o que sobre acute teimosia para tentar de novo para continuar. Sergio, now an assistant professor, watched with arms folded. In the back, a few students whispered, too confident by half. I let them. I placed the bot down. Our bots now monitor over 60 kilometers of city floodplains. They've cut maintenance costs, reduced property loss, and, most importantly, prevented new disasters in the neighborhoods we call home. A city official joined me, waving live test footage as the bot moved through a tunnel mock-up. Screens showed water levels, blockages, and sensor stats. Small amazement spread in the room, hard to dismiss what was right in front of them. Dr. Neves leaned forward. Lucas essa integração pode demonstrar detecção on-site. Marina tapped her laptop. The bot's sensors pinged, highlighted a blockage, suggested a route for maintenance. Students squeezed closer to the monitor. Even Sergio stared, looking for a flaw. For a moment it was quiet. Then a professor who'd dismissed me years ago came forward, touching the bot. Parabéns, Lucas. Curitiba precisava disso. Bruno, long gone, wasn't there, only his legacy in the half-smirks and mutters. But it didn't matter. I let the doubts pass through me and dissolve. When the audience left, I lingered, surrounded by all the evidence of my long, stubborn labor. Sunlight cut through the high windows, bathing the bots in gold. In the still studio, I gazed at the spot where my first prototype had collapsed. The memory of rejection remained, painful but smaller now. The courage left behind after that day mattered more. Then at the back of the hall my mother appeared, purse clutched, her smile both proud and grateful. I walked to her. She hugged me tight, whispering, "Eu sabia meu filho, so faltava voce saber também." I closed my eyes, letting the weight of all those years rest quietly inside. When I stepped out into the street, Curitiba felt changed, complicated, defiant, and unmistakably mine.